Hello, welcome to another episode of Prehistory in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse, and before we begin, as always, thank you so much to my generous patrons and my channel members from our sister channel over at History in the Dark. You are the reason why this content remains just so bizarre. Evolution, what have you done? And today, we are going to discuss just weird prehistoric animals. I mean, even now in the animal kingdom, there's a lot of weird things on the planet. That's not just a product of the modern day. Some extinct animals got downright odd. These are 5 extinct creatures that were just bizarre. The Platybelodon. What is going on, sir? Sir, I do not like to judge a book by its cover. Anyway, so I'm judging a book by its cover. Goodness, what's going on with your face? Platybelodons are an extinct genus of 4 different species, actually, of large herbivorous proboscidean mammals. Proboscideans include elephants. They are a relative of the modern-day elephant, which I suppose you can kind of see in their overall body layout, but their trunk, if you can call it that, is definitely not the same. They lived during the Middle Miocene Epoch in Africa, Asia, and the Caucasus. The first species, Grandgeri, was discovered in 1929, and at the time it was thought that the bizarre shape of their face was to help them feed on swampy areas of grassy savannas, using the teeth to shovel up aquatic and semi-aquatic vegetation. But wear patterns on the teeth suggest that that actually isn't the case at all. Instead, they would have used their lower tusk jaw thing shovel they got going on to strip bark from trees. And they may have actually used their sharp incisors that form the edge of the shovel more like a modern-day scythe, grasping at branches with their trunks and then rubbing them against the lower teeth to cut it from a tree. Definitely an interesting way of feasting, and as they got older and stronger, it's believed they could have gotten a hold of more coarser vegetation and been able to handle and consume it. It's likely they died out because this method of eating is very, very, very specific, and if they couldn't find a substantial food source, well, you know how evolution goes. They actually weren't as large as modern elephants generally. Grandgeri wasn't that much taller than a man, but they were still pretty decently sized. And the remains of all 4 of the species can be found in natural history museums all over the world. They're definitely a unique case. Probably one of the most recognizable extinct animals, just because of their bizarre jaws. The Sharovipteryx. This is another genus, but of reptiles this time, that only contains a single species, Sharovipteryx mirabilis. They lived in the middle to late Triassic period, around the same time dinosaurs were coming into the fold, but these are just reptiles, except that they're, well, they could glide. And that on its own wouldn't necessarily be weird, as we have modern-day flying squirrels that do something similar. Except the way Sharovipteryx did it is very, well, normally when you envision some kind of glide setup, you would think that an animal would use their front arms and stretch the airfoil, whatever it may be, between them and their rear legs, just like the flying squirrel. But that's not how Sharovipteryx handled it. In fact, it's the only gliding creature with a membrane surrounding the pelvis instead of the pectoral girdle. It was their rear legs that handled the gliding part, their very, very long rear legs. At the time, they would have lived in what is now modern-day Russia, and only a single fossil of this thing has ever been found. But it is a very well-preserved fossil, as we have quite a bit of data about it. Paleontologists still somewhat debate regarding exactly the layout of the membrane, whether it was more up like a delta formation, or perhaps it was stretched down towards the tail. It's not 100% confirmed, but based on more recent simulations, it seems the wing membrane would have allowed it to glide as a delta wing aircraft does. That part is pretty clear, but if the tiny front limbs also supported a membrane, they could have acted as a very efficient means of controlling pitch stability, and without that forewing, those scientists found that controlling gliding would have been really difficult. So it may have also had an aeronautic canard in the front too, but we still aren't completely sure. Either way though, it is definitely a unique case. There really isn't anything else like it in the fossil record. Longisquama. This is another genus with only a single species, and what? Wait! Sir! What are you compensating for? What is with all the hockey sticks? What is with all the hockey sticks? You don't need that many. But apparently, you did. This creature also lived in the Middle or Late Triassic, and it is another reptile. The single species is known as Longisquama ignignus, and it's known from a poorly preserved skeleton as well as several incomplete impressions. The name Longisquama actually means long scales, which refers to the incredibly long, bizarre structures that appear to grow out of its back. It's believed that these were long, modified scales in and of themselves in a single unpaired row along the dorsal midline, although some interpret them as early feathers, but this is from a reptile, not a dinosaur. And still more paleontologists point out that the structures are anatomically very different from feathers, rather more like elongate and ribbon-like scales, and even other observers argue that they may not have been part of this creature at all, pointing out that perhaps the remains were being misinterpreted, and that those impressions are simply plant fronds that were preserved along with the creature. If that's the case, it would make them a much more normal lizard, but for the sake of this video, I'm gonna assume that this is still accurate. Because the argument against that theory is that there's no plant that's known to be in the area and time period that this creature is from that would match the pattern. The only thing that can attribute to it is a bizarre structure coming from the animal itself. Due to the poor quality of the remains and the fact they only ever have impressions outside of that, it has been pretty difficult to really figure out exactly what these are for. But they were probably for something like display, or perhaps even camouflage, pretending to be a plant in the woods or something. There's a lot of research to be done on these things, though to be brutally honest, without more complete remains, we may never know for sure exactly what this weird creature was really all about. The Tullimonstrum, sometimes just called the Tully Monster, or Tully's Monster, depends who you ask, is, it's something. It's definitely one of the weirdest creatures that I've ever seen in my life, and it's a genus with, again, only one species of soft-bodied bilaterian animals that would have lived in shallow tropical coastal waters during the Pennsylvanian geological period about 300 million years ago. The only species attributed to this genus is T. gregarium, and examples of it have only been found in one spot, the Mason Creek fossil beds of Illinois. The classification of this thing has been somewhat of a hotly debated issue because, frankly, it's just so weird. No one really knows exactly where it's supposed to be. Mollusks, arthropods, conodonts, worms, tunicates, and even vertebrates. So I think it's pretty clear that paleontologists really aren't sure exactly where this thing is supposed to go. It had a mostly cigar-shaped body with a triangular tail fin, two long stalked eyes, and a proboscis tipped with a mouth-like appendage. It looked almost like a submarine with some kind of claw arm or something, and is believed to have been a carnivore that haunted in the ocean's water column. Back when this creature lived, Illinois was a mixture of ecosystems like muddy estuaries, marine environments, rivers, and lakes, so it makes total sense this creature would flourish somewhere like that because, well, there was a lot of water. It wouldn't have been a very big creature, probably reaching lengths up to 35 centimeters, 14 inches. And the absence of hard parts in the fossil implies that the animal probably didn't possess organs composed of bone at all. And paleontologists still debate whether or not it's a vertebrate or a non-vertebrate. We really just don't know. It's such a weird creature. Based on my sources, the most common assessment is that it's some kind of distant relative of modern-day lampreys. But even that's still questionable. Either way though, the Tully monster is actually the officially recognized state fossil of Illinois. Which is cool, I guess, but I still want to know what it is! Hallucigenia. What? What am I even looking at? I don't even know where to begin here. Hallucigenia is a genus of Cambrian animal. It actually contains 3 different species, and all of them look like this. The generic name represents the confusion that this creature caused, as well as the eccentric nature of its history of study. When it was first erected as a genus, the first one discovered in 1911 as Hallucigenia sparsa, it was actually reconstructed upside down and back to front. Because frankly, the paleontologists had no idea what they were looking at! It was thought the spines on it were actually the legs, when in reality, no, those are up. Those are supposed to go up, and the legs go upside. Yeah, there you go. That's better. These things would have lived around 500 million years ago during the Cambrian period, and yeah, I don't even know where to begin. Well, in case you think you might have nightmares, they were actually extremely small. The largest they ever got was about 5.5 centimeters, 2 3/16 inches. They were long, tubular animals with 10 pairs of slender legs. They have spines as well as simple eyes on the head area, which otherwise is generally pretty difficult to identify because, well, look at it. Do you know where the head is? You tell me. Despite the confusion this species causes, admittedly, we do actually know how it relates to other animals in the fossil record. It's recognized as a labopodian, which is a grade of Paleozoic penarthropods, from which modern-day velvet worms, water bears, and arthropods arose. So that's where these little guys kind of fit in, which is nice to know, but still, Mother Nature, we need to talk about this, because I just need you to realize that this doesn't need to... Yes, I feel like I'm hallucinating, is kind of where we're at. Hallucigenia is definitely an appropriate name. Top tier, absolutely 10 out of 10. Would name it the same way again. Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.